What's up, everybody? Welcome to Respect Our Authoritah Wisecrack South Park podcast. My name is Jared, and I'm here with the other authoritarians. We got Ryan.
Howdy ho, Internet.
And we got Amanda.
Hey, hey.
And Lux.
Hey, dudes.
All right, so today we're breaking down Season 22, Episode 3 of South Park, titled The Problem with a Poo. So before we get into first impressions, we're going to play our little game that we established where I'm going to try and guess what all the rest of the authoritarians think of this episode. But we're going to try something a little bit new. I want you guys to guess what I think. So I'm going to guess you guys, and then you guys will guess me. All right, so Ryan, I'm going to do you last since I've been fucking up so bad. So I'm going to start with Lux. You know, Lux, I feel like I just have no idea, so I'm always going middle of the road, and I'm just going to say Lux is going to give this a B+. Amanda, God, I really don't know, because I know that Amanda was not a fan of Strong Woman, so that makes me think she may not like this episode that much, so I'm going to guess B for Amanda. And with Ryan, it's either going to be... It's going to be radical on one side or the other, so I'm going to guess A+++. All right, now you guys guess me, and then we'll reveal what we actually think. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, can I not reveal what I actually think based on your rating? Because it has to do with my rating of you.
Okay, sure.
I mean, you nailed it on the head this week, Jared.
Yeah!
A++, South Park is back, baby!
Hell yeah.
Season 22, Episode 3, here we are, the funniest episode in forever. So good, not a moment was wasted in the script. It was just hilarious from beginning to end. We had old favorites back, and I think, Jared, that I would be sad if you didn't agree with me. So I'm going to guess that you think also A+. Maybe not A++, because I go crazy on the pluses, but...
I think there's a diminishing return with the pluses.
Well, yeah, probably. You're probably right. But I'm going to give you... I hope that you give it at least an A, hopefully an A+.
Okay. All right, Lux, what do you think? Or how did I do first?
I think that since I'm apparently a wild card, that your guess for me reflects something about what you're thinking, and I'm going to guess that you're going to give it a B+ also. I have other reasons for that guess. I thought that before, but now I super think that's true.
Okay, well, what did you think?
Oh, you were actually right. I think I'd give it a B+.
Okay. All right, and Amanda?
Wow, I'm like on the other side of the country on this. I thought you were going to give it like a D- because I give it like an F. I literally have been racking my brain all day trying to think of an episode of South Park I've hated more than this one, and I can't, so.
Wow.
Can't wait to hear why.
Now Amanda and Ryan can fight instead of me and Ryan.
Okay, so I was at least I was right in knowing that Amanda would dislike this one more than the other ones.
You were right. Yeah, there was that.
Okay.
So what was your rating, Jared?
My rating is I think this is a fucking South Park masterpiece.
God damn it, yeah, baby!
Yeah.
High five! Let's do it!
Yeah, dude, A++ to the 10th degree.
Wow, yes.
This is like last season, my favorite episode, and I think Ryan's favorite episode too, was Double Down. Yeah. The one that had, I think, the most precise, interesting social commentary, and I think this one's up there.
Yeah, me too.
I think this is fucking amazing. And there's a ton to break down, so I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this one. So, without further ado, let me go into a quick recap. So it's 8 weeks till Christmas, and the mayor decides to cut the budget of this year's Christmas pageant, leaving the recently deemed offensive Mr. Hankey with half the resources to organize South Park's holiday festivities. Meanwhile, PC Principal tries to apologize to Strong Woman and put their affair behind them, but that's made infinitely more difficult when it's revealed that she's pregnant and wants to move forward without him. Mr. Hankey's Ambien-fueled Twitter shitposting gets him in trouble with the outraged public and bring him to court to fire him from his job planning Christmas. Mr. Hankey's rejected by every lawyer in town. The only person willing to defend him is Kyle. Strong Woman gives birth to 5 PC babies, but the 2 of them refuse to admit the obvious, that PC Principal is the father. After an unsuccessful day at court, Kyle and Mr. Hankey try to redeem themselves with an early Christmas celebration, but his performance triggers the PC babies, causing Mr. Hankey to lose it and get in a fist fight with Kyle. Now smeared with shit, Kyle is a pariah in the community and has to turn his back on Mr. Hankey. Meanwhile, PC Principal and Strong Woman vow to keep the children hidden and never to let them know that they were the result of a workplace romance. South Park casts Mr. Hankey out of town and is banished to whatever place still tolerates bigotry, which ends up being Springfield, #cancel the Simpsons. End of episode.
Mwah.
Yeah, that
Mwah.
joke was the chef's kiss. That was perfect. I was like, mwah. It was it's one of the funniest things I've ever done on that show.
Can't wait to hear Amanda's critiques.
Well, yeah, so let's just get into it. Do you guys want to just hear? Let me just get through what I think the main message of this is, and then we'll open it up from there. So let's first focus on the A plot, which is the tragic fall of Mr. Hankey.
Oh, God.
Yeah, this really actually tugged at my heartstrings, made me very sad. So I think some of the key moments here is that when Mr. Hankey is getting fired and he's looking for lawyers to help him, the lawyers keep telling him that, sorry, I don't defend pieces of shit. And then Gerald says something that's very prescient for the rest of the episode. Gerald says, I learned a long time ago, if you defend poop, you get stained.
Mm-hmm.
So Kyle, being the hero of the show and oftentimes the voice of reason and the voice of the show, says that he comes to the boys and he says, I figured out how to give Mr. Hankey another chance. I need you guys there as character witnesses. And they say, nope, not getting the stink on me. And I think this idea of getting the stink on you and trying to defend people is ultimately basically the tragic statement of the episode. So there's some interesting things going on here. So Stan says, why do you keep defending him, Kyle? Everyone in town thinks he's a piece of shit. And there's something really interesting here is that there's this cynicism in which the kids condemn him only by mentioning the public perception of Mr. Hankey, not his actual deeds. There's this narcissism among the kids. They're not pissed off about what Mr. Hankey said. I mean, these kids are little shits. We've seen for 21 seasons how they're just a bunch of little troublemakers, but only because they're associated with him and don't want to get their reputation smeared. So I think a lot of what this episode is dealing with is that people will throw their friends to the wolves in order to maintain their own reputation.
They also say, because specifically it's 2018, so
Yes.
over and over. So basically, maybe you could have defended pieces of shit in the past, or
Yeah, you could have
quote-unquote.
defended pieces of shit in the past, but not today. So Kyle says, look, he messed up, but I don't think he deserves everything that's coming down on him. I want to stand by my friend. And then Cartman says, let's see how that goes for you in 2018.
Right.
And I think this...
Weirdly self-aware moment from Cartman.
And I think this is really the message of these 3 episodes of South Park is there's this sense of defeated futility. You can't stand by your friends. You can't go against the mob. And just as Sharon in episode 1 folds and says, you know what, I'll stop being outraged. Just as Father Maxie in episode 2 folds and says that I can't expect the people to stop criticizing the church and I can't make the church better. All I can do is just try to be better myself. Kyle, ultimately at the end, he has to resign hope and turn his back on Mr. Hankey, even though he thinks Mr. Hankey deserves a defense. And so ultimately, Gerald is right. Gerald says, if you defend poop, you're going to get stained. And sure enough, after the fist fight with Mr. Hankey, not only is Kyle walking around literally smeared in shit, but his reputation is stained. People insult him as he walks the streets. And the real tragedy comes with the last line Mr. Hankey says before he gets sent off. He says, we're all a little shitty sometimes.
Yeah.
But even though Kyle knows that, and perhaps people know that we can all be shitty, and Kyle wants to defend his friend, he has to just turn his back on him because otherwise he's going to get erased too.
And here's a 3rd episode where the thesis is we're all fucked. Right.
I think last season was more we're all fucked. This season is much more it's hopeless. Well, I guess that's similar.
That's what I'm
but-
saying. Is that yeah? Like Kyle learned this lesson, but doesn't matter. Like, don't go against the mob.
Don't go against the mob.
And what I also liked about this episode, if I can jump in, is that it had like a little bit of good like moral and thematic ambiguity and ambivalence because like Mr. Hankey is being a piece of shit, you know? Like
absolutely.
Yeah, they're
it's
not
calling
defending
back very
that.
clearly to like the Roseanne situation when she tweeted all those shitty things and was like, I'm on Ambien, stuff like that. And those people were being shitty. So like there's this good moral ambivalence of like yeah, it's good to condemn shitty people.
What people
for
were being shitty? What people were being shitty?
Mr. Hankey.
No. I'm saying no. Lux is saying that in the Roseanne situation. You're saying Roseanne or the people defending Roseanne?
Roseanne was being shitty.
Right. Yes.
Like she tweeted a bunch of racist shit and was like, I'm on Ambien. And so like there's a value to condemning shitty people for being shitty, but at the same time, the threshold for shittiness is kind of like blurry in this way where you kind of have to default to like getting away from it, and that can lead to like condemning people who maybe don't deserve it in the same way.
Yeah,
and I really liked that ambiguity, and that was like a really nuanced approach for South Park to take on a thing.
I totally agree. It would be so easy to paint Mr. Hankey as a saint that's being unjustly pursued by PC babies, but he says really shitty things, and he makes no effort to better himself and just always scapegoats Ambien.
right.
Right, and even like the Kavanaugh callback, he like acts so entitled to like he's under attack by this thing when he's being an asshole. Like he acts so entitled and defensive in this way that is like, obviously the Kavanaugh callback, but like again, it's the same thing of like.
I don't really think there's any Kavanaugh in this episode. I think
Well,
that was
yeah,
most
the
clearly
hearing
Roseanne.
was extremely Kavanaugh.
The
there was
Hankey
a
hearings
hearing
were-
I think it was
the Hankey
trying to
hearings
be.
were
I just
totally
feel like
Kavanaugh.
they didn't have anything smart to say
Well, it was
about
like
it.
Jared, it's like what you said in the office when I was there visiting. Like they just used the images and the like idea, like the visual and performancey parts of the Kavanaugh trial without talking about like actually Kavanaugh himself.
Yeah, I just think that the Roseanne thing is much clearer a parallel.
It was very interesting because they totally do both. They are absolutely having a Kavanaugh callback and a Roseanne. It's this they're blending those two controversies
And Norm
Mr.
Macdonald
Hankey.
too.
Kind of, I guess, if you've kept up with that one. But Amanda,
Yeah,
I want to
Kyle-
hear
Kyle's
what
Norm
you think
Macdonald.
about
Yeah, I want to
everything
hear
we
what
just
Miranda
said.
hates about this.
What did you think about everything?
And let's keep it to
Jared just
Mr.
said?
Hankey. We're going to get to PC Principal and Strong Woman later.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah,
So
Amanda,
what did I
uncork
hate?
it.
Or what did you
So,
hate about
like,
the Mr. Hankey?
I've been sitting here like trying to think why this episode just like pissed me off so much, and it's just like also like I want to stop myself before getting passionate about anything that has to do with like Mr. Hankey because it feels absurd. I just thought that it was like so off the mark in terms of like the pettiness of like why spend the entire episode like talking about empathy for like this shitty character like
So you don't think we're all shitty sometimes?
It pissed me off. I feel like they are so like self-righteous about free speech stuff without ever just saying that like you shouldn't say certain things. I don't know.
I mean, you don't think
I-
they condemned? I mean, Mr. Hankey looks like an asshole in the episode.
Right. That's why I think the episode really succeeds is because I guess I would disagree with Amanda in that it would be much more overtly one-sided if Mr. Hankey was painted as a victim. But I think he is shitty and he's scapegoating Ambien and he's making no efforts to better himself.
And it's just about the people that are kind of saying, like, look, there's a spectrum to shittiness, basically. Like, and let's give this guy a second
I don't think it did a good
chance.
job, like talking about the way that, like, I think what's actually really interesting about mob outrage is that it's a way for all of us to put our shittiness onto like one person. Like Roseanne becomes the most talked about story about racism in the entire year, whereas like structural racism is literally everywhere. And I feel like they don't talk about that at all. And that's like, I just feel like they didn't talk about the really interesting things in this issue.
Well, I think those are two
I think-
separate issues, but I still think the first one is interesting. I mean, to me, the Mr. Hankey thing is, and I really like on the other side of this, so we've already talked about how Mr. Hankey is shitty, but on the other hand, like, I think that we're meant to interpret his desire to celebrate Christmas as genuine.
Absolutely.
That's all he cares about is the spirit of Christmas, but the sad thing is that we're no longer interested in redemption or bringing out the good in someone who's made mistakes or saving people's jobs rather than take away. We're only interested in ruthless, vicious punishment. And
Like, are we though? I mean, even comedians who have like committed sexual assault are like walking right back and getting like a pretty okay reception some of the time, you know? Like, I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah, like the question of punishment.
I
is,
mean,
like, the
look,
really
I don't think
interesting
we
one,
should
'cause, like,
apply
how long
this-
Does it last? Is a real thing. But like in this case, I think more than even talking about anything specific within outside of the show, South Park's talking about itself a lot in this episode, in the sense of like it almost has a sense of resignation to it, where it's like we've defended things that are probably shitty and have gotten yelled at a lot, and like we're done doing that because we don't want to get yelled at anymore. Was like
Right,
the
but-
vibe I got off this episode,
but
which I think
that's
was like kind
sad.
of profound and also kind of sad.
that's really sad. I totally agree. I do think there's that meta element to them. Like maybe they wanted to perhaps defend someone like a James Gunn or a Roseanne Barr, but they know if they do that, they'll get stained. Like Cartman says, get the stink on them.
And that's actually the James Gunn Roseanne Barr is actually a really perfect comparison, because I think that you could very defensively in 2018 defend James Gunn. People still get really mad because like the whole James Gunn situation was clearly done in bad faith.
See, I don't see that is the point of the episode.
No, exactly.
No, I mean,
example,
like you said, it's very clearly in bad faith. It's like because I agree that that's a perfect comparison, because it's basically two people on opposite sides of the political spectrum, and then people getting outraged at what they said, and then the same outcome happened, but people have different views because they want to interpret the intent of the people, and then that's really kind of what this episode's about, is that we got to get into like, are these get into the intention of Mr. Hankey. He genuinely Kyle believes he deserves a second chance. James Gunn probably deserves a second chance, but it's debatable. But to just shun these people is kind of what the episode's about. It's like these people are just being shunned to wherever bigots go. I guess Springfield, It really is this kind of like, just take these people out to pasture, kind of like what you just said, Amanda, about like, these people are coming back to with a warm reception. I mean, I assume you're talking about the Louis C.K. thing, where he came back.
Yeah.
He came back to like it was like a 70-person club in New York, and people walked out, and it was a huge deal. So I would argue that the mob is still working on him. I'm not saying he deserves or doesn't deserve to come back into public life, but I'm just saying that it's kind of like, where do people go? Are they supposed to go just sit in their home for the rest of their lives? That's kind of like what they're commenting on at the end of the Hankey thing. Where do the shitty people go? If we're all shitty, where are we all going to go?
I mean, but literally we have a huge racist in the White House. Like, you can totally get away with saying racist things and still hold a lot of power in this country. So, like,
only
I
if you
feel
have
like
nothing to
obsessing over these few examples of comedians is like,
yeah, but you brought it
off
up.
the point.
Right, but I think part of what the show's trying to do is like, I hate to go back to this James Gunn Roseanne thing, except that it's like such a perfect example, is like, the reason why at the end of the day Mr. Hankey should be banished, right, is like Jared said, he makes no effort to apologize or better himself. That's the difference between Gunn and Roseanne, right? Like, James Gunn was like, I'm sorry I said those things, that was the past, and then Roseanne
So did
said,
Roseanne.
I thought the bitch was white.
Yeah, well, yeah, she said,
Right.
I'm so sorry, and then
So, like,
she said, the bitch is white, I thought she was white. It was
so
fucking
like, that distinction
crazy.
in behavior is like why we can condemn Hankey, but maybe we shouldn't condemn James Gunn. But in the world we live in, they both get condemned, right?
Right.
And like, that's why I think this episode's so interesting. So I think you're right, Amanda. Like, at the end of the day, a lot of these like quote unquote punishments for these people that we condemn like don't actually last that long or mean that much. Like, they become Supreme Court justices or get like a new tour or whatever. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that like it doesn't also have unfortunate victims like your James Gunns and other people who I can't come up off the top of my head who like are awesome and do get like career damage and life shittiness and don't deserve it. Like, it's unfair in a lot of directions. I think this episode does a really good job of sort of showing how and why that happens. But I mean, also at the end of the day, like, you're right, we don't.
But don't you think though that like you're basically saying that there are some good people that kind of are like collateral damage in this culture war, whereas isn't what South Park is saying that we should take a step back and not evaluate all people basically
We're all shitty sometimes.
We're all shitty sometimes. Cartman and them would turn their back on James Gunn or Al Franken or any of these people who supposedly got fucked by this, the same as they would Roseanne, because they have the stain of the shit.
Right, it's all very self-serving.
There's like a distinction, right? Or that's worth considering, the distinction between your Gunns and your Roseannes or whatever, which is something that we don't do generally.
Yeah, we should.
Which, like, I feel like is just such a petty, like, I'm sorry, like, white person issue in a world, in the world's landscape. Like, yes, there are like some white people who will get in trouble because like racism has just not been acknowledged for like most of our country's history, and people are mad about it. So I guess it also comes down to like where you stand on like the PC, like, is there a PC problem? And like, I think I just probably stand in a slightly different place. I just feel like the outrage is kind of justified, even if it's not always funneled in the right direction or towards the right people.
See, I come from the like two things can be true at once. We can be getting rid of the mob, but also we can be getting rid of or acknowledging the very real, like you're saying, systematic injustices in this country. We can do both without the mob is kind of what I think.
And I think we can make progress without horribly dividing everybody.
Right, yeah. I mean, we can tackle sexual assault in a way without like just, if someone has been it's just like a stain, like if it's like a scarlet letter situation kind of thing.
Well, this whole bad faith argument brings up an interesting.
Is fundamentally saying that the outrage. I mean, if we're using Mr. Hankey as like the guy who does outraging, right? or who makes people outraged.
The
The
asshole.
show
Yeah.
is fundamentally saying that like the outrage is justified. It's the question of like how it's directed when it does.
Exactly.
That
Yes.
is
So,
that is
like,
an
what
issue,
are-
which I
what
think
are
is
they
a reasonable thing.
What are they? What?
Like, what are they saying is a? Well, I guess I mean it's like a cartoon show. They don't have to offer a better alternative. I guess like what is a better alternative?
Well, so that's the thing is that, as we mentioned earlier, South Park is basically just resigning into saying that this whole thing is futile. I don't think they are proposing an alternative other than, I mean, I guess if we are to think that Kyle is the hero, or at least his intentions were heroic, it is that we should try and better Mr. Hankey rather than trying to expel him.
But the problem with that, Reed, is that Kyle's also fundamentally naive in the story because Mr. Hankey, like we keep saying, is being an asshole. Like he doesn't
But there's a
deserve
really
Kyle's
funny-
defense at a certain point.
So you mentioned something meta about this episode that I totally agree with, that the show is commenting that perhaps they would want to defend something shitty, but they can't because they'll get the stink on them. But I think one of the other interesting meta things is that the crude jokes that Mr. Hankey makes are some of the funniest parts in the episode.
And yeah, the defecation lawsuit is amazing.
Right, or
It is
even
one of the funniest bits in
or
the
even
whole
when he
episode.
says the city council are a bunch of pussy-licking Islamists, or the city council can suck my Mexican dick. You know, I think that the show is able to make these jokes under the guise of something that's being shunned by the community, but it's ultimately these moments that are the most punchline, jokey moments. So I think like almost the episode is showing that, hey, you guys watching this who are laughing at these jokes are just as shitty as Mr. Hankey, so be careful if you're gonna condemn him.
Well, like that's the trade-off, right? I think that they're making that clear that there's a trade-off of like, look, if we want to be like serious about, you know, monitoring language and behavior and sort of doing this sort of shunning project, then at the same time we lose something. What we lose is jokes like the city council can suck my Mexican dick, and like you can make that choice if you think it's a better world without that stuff. But like that's a calculation you have to make.
Absolutely. So let's take this to the PC babies. So I think one of my favorite things about this episode and how the A and B plots pretty masterfully collide when there's this sense of hope that Kyle may be able to bring out the benevolence of Mr. Hankey's message. And when they start the show, it works for a little bit. And the people of South Park really love it. But then the PC babies, which obviously there's a double meaning there. They're not only literally babies who are PC, but I think the South Park is kind of saying that, you know, PC people who problematize everything are babies.
Yeah, I felt a little personally attacked by that joke.
Same.
But the PC babies problematize his message, and his message is that Christmas means peace among men, and then of course that's a problem because they're not also
That was
saying
my
women.
favorite scene was when
Right.
he was
And
just
then he
saying
freaks
all the
out.
normal Christmas stuff, like "Come on, boys and girls," and they're all they're crying at that.
Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about PC principal and strong woman. So Amanda, how did this change your opinion of strong woman, or did it only fiercely make you hate her even more?
I just feel like they took literally the worst joke of last season and just like hit me over the head with it repeatedly with this episode. Because it was never funny that people got mad about the freaking affair that people would barf at their affair, because that's not at all what like this entire, like people aren't complaining about like consensual sex that they had with their employers. They're complaining about when they were like locked in rooms with their employers against their will. And it's like, so that was never funny to me. And so then just build it, like they just kind of kept building that joke out, and I just didn't think it was funny.
I feel like I agree. I feel like that outrage has died and is no longer really that relevant.
Well, I kind of agree with whenever that first came out, and with the point Amanda just said, that like, why are they barfing at a consensual relationship? Like, it kind of does muddy the point, I feel like. But in this episode, I feel like that's kind of like a side note, though. Like, you don't really have to remember that, even though they talk about it. But it's mainly just that they all look and sound like PC principal is the main thing, right?
I liked how there was a kind of hard pivot in the character, because like she's in his line, it's like, I made a mistake and I'm moving on. We don't need to think about the past.
Right.
And then it's like, right, because the story's no longer about their old relationship. It's about these babies. And I was glad for that, because the babies are much funnier than their relationship ever was.
Right.
Well, I want to
But
break.
it still is at the end, because they're like, we can never bring these babies out of my office.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a very good joke.
I agree.
I didn't think it was particularly funny, but I do think that some of what PC Principal and Strong Woman are representing here is kind of interesting, whether you agree with it or not, or whether I agree with it or not. But So there's this whole thing where PC Principal is overly apologizing and needing to tell her that even though it was clearly consensual, he has to tell her that he took advantage of his position and manipulated her into a sexual encounter, which is funny because I think that they're poking fun of the fact that PC people in positions of privilege have to like bend reality in order to adhere to the savvy cultural narrative that universally deems one race, creed, color, gender the oppressor and the other the oppressed. In this case, he has to present what is clearly a consensual workplace romance in the language of abusive power dynamics. And then, on the other hand, we have Strong Woman who refuses to compromise her image of the female, self-sufficient strong woman. And so she refuses to let PC Principal suggest he manipulated her into doing anything, which he didn't. And she wants to move forward without him and raise 5 kids as a single woman, even though he's clearly the father and very willing to be part of the children's lives. And then while they're on the way to the hospital and she's giving birth, she says, "I've worked my whole life to be the strongest woman possible. A person little girls look up to. If those girls knew I'm the kind of person to get knocked up by my boss." So there's an interesting thing going on here in which she's kind of framing herself as this order of representation. So even though their romance is a legitimate one, she's worried that she will seem like she's compromised her independence to get to someone who could either provide her comfort or expedite her career. And we see more of this, and I think this is another thematic way in which the A and B plots kind of parallel each other, because the mayor says, "Truth is, some people find you offensive, Mr. Hankey. Some people think shit isn't the best representation of Christmas." And I don't know, I can't help but really sense a deep cynicism here, where people are more concerned with how they seem and not enough about how they are. It's like a real, like, hyper-real nightmare, as if our lives are no longer real. They're just images that inform some other reality, and therefore we have to heavily curate our being to promote somebody else's idea of social good. Like, Strong Woman is like, I have to basically I have to deny myself my wishes and my desires because I need to be an image of social good or something like that for little girls to look up
A
to.
virtue signaling matrix.
Matrix.
Well, and this is very like a pertinent theme in like media in general these days. Like this is basically what the New American Vandal season is about. It's also the movie Assassination Nation's about. And it's like a real concern a lot of people have is like the ways between the gap between the person inside and how we represent ourselves, and the more and more ways in which society demands different kinds of self-representation, self-projection. So I think that's an interesting thing for South Park to get into. I'm sure we're going to see more of it because it is so pervasive like now.
Right.
But A Strong Woman was such a good example of it because like it shows how these like projected identities that you can have compromise like very human desires and needs and even like pragmatic like life things. Like you say, like she'd rather maintain her image and be a single mom to 5 kids who cry every time someone starts a black guy walks into a bar joke than like acknowledge that the kids have a dad. Right. Which is a crazy calculation, but it's one that doesn't feel crazy in the context of like a world so grounded in perception is the one that we live in.
Right.
I have a brief question about the 3 black guys walk into a bar joke. You know, it was because the doctor is saying that, right?
Yeah.
He says 3 black guys walk into a bar. They all start crying because
Right.
they think it's gonna be a racist joke,
Right.
right? Or it already is. And then he says, and then they leave, which is like
That makes it
supposed to be more racist, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I think
that
that
then
was
they
badly
stop
written joke in
crying.
South Park.
I think that was just a miscalculated joke because I hear what Ryan's saying. It makes it seem like by them stopping crying when he says they leave, it makes it seem like the babies are crying because 3 black men just walked into a bar, you know, and
Right.
they're scared of the black men.
So I was confused because they're PC.
The other thing that bugged me is I feel like it would have been a lot more interesting if Strong Woman had just gotten an abortion. Not to tie back to last week, but like,
Or like a late term
I
one
just
after they'd already
feel
been
like-
born.
I just feel like that's more believable to me.
Yeah, but I mean, they won't. I think for the first time this season, the PC babies feel like something that's going to be serialized. Like I feel like they're going to want to come back to that.
I kind of agree with
because
Amanda.
if it's a metaphor for the broader mob, I think that's clearly what they want to talk about.
Yeah.
I just also
Since they're
feel
giving
like
it a character, seems.
like I feel like it's I mean, I know it's supposed to be condescending. Like I do feel like younger kids, like kids who are like 10 years younger than me, like, are smarter about social issues because, like, they did grow up in, like, a better social climate. So, like, I guess that's why that joke didn't. I mean, maybe I'm being a snowflake about it, but, like, it just, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I kind of like that joke because I definitely, I don't know. I
mean, like with anything, some
do
things
the
can go too
SJW
far.
thing pretty often, but it felt reasonable to say that sometimes I go overboard and can be a little bit of a baby.
Hey, like Mr. Hankey said, everyone can be shitty no matter what your beliefs are. You can still be shitty.
Oh yeah, I walk and talk and proof of that. But I don't know. I think that I don't know. I really like the idea that they're fucking around with the PC babies. I just hope that it goes in an interesting direction and not like a really easy one. Because there are ways this could cash out very easily that would be kind of boring, but there are ways it could also go that could be really interesting and cool. So I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah, I really admire this episode. I actually walked away thinking this episode was much more balanced than I think Amanda's taking it, because I walked away saying to myself, it's easy to either say on the one hand that people who complain about a poo or who think that art needs to conform to a particular group's social standards are just problematizing everything, or on the other hand that these shows are offensive and reinforce humiliating stereotypes that are harmful to society. But I really think that South Park kind of took the high road on this one, and it doesn't really fall on either side. Because Mr. Hankey is so shitty, and because the PC babies are being a little bit ridiculous. I think it's the reason I love South Park so much is because it is almost impossible to tackle these issues that are so divisive, and they're fucking going for it. And I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah,
I think they're doing a great job.
Really impressive.
Yeah,
amazing.
Also, I think there's a degree to which this episode does actually perform Amanda's criticism of the episode. Like, because Amanda, part of your argument, right, is that like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like part of your argument is that it's performing this idea that they're getting punished, but really they just like these kind of people just go away and come back later and they're fine, right?
Right.
Well, I think that's part of the point of the Simpsons joke at the end, right? Is that like there is a place where all these people go and it's not so bad. It's fucking The Simpsons, which is the longest running fucking animated comedy in history, right? Like, which is I think maybe
nice.
a stand-in for this idea that like, yeah, your Louis C.K.'s or Aziz Ansari's like go off to comedian rehab and come back and they're fine. And what that looks like is Springfield also fucking taking shots at The Simpsons is very good. Al Jean is being a real asshole these days.
Were they taking shots though? I felt like that was like an empathetic thing. Like I felt like they were saying like, oh yeah, like our buddies who like we feel your pain, dudes. Like
Oh, I don't think so. I thought that was a straight up rip on them because they've been such assholes about the Apu thing.
I disagree. I agree with Amanda, actually. I think that they're kind of doing a little bit of both. They're kind of like in the context of the story, they're saying, oh, those fucking Springfield, that's where those bigots live. But I think the fact that it's kind of like hyperbole that they're kind of like, yeah, we don't really believe that at the end of the day.
Yeah, I also agree that it's kind of midway between Amanda and Lux's thing. To me, it said... I think they're being a little bit mischievous by equating their brand of off-color humor with The Simpsons, as if to say, hey, in 2018, you're on our level, buddy. In the eyes of the PC babies, you're just as shitty as us.
That is kind of, yeah, I think that's kind of what they're saying with the poo.
I think that's part of it, but I honestly I'd sincerely say that like The Simpsons are shittier than South Park in any by any kind of like
no way
performative PC metric. Yeah,
I haven't seen South Park in
the way
years.
that they handled way they handled their reaction to the thing about the problem with Apu is way shittier than anything South Park has done as far as politics goes in years and years and years.
Yeah, so let's talk about the title. So for those of you that don't know, the title is a play off of a documentary made by a guy named Hari Kondabolu that Ryan and I actually worked with once. And he made a documentary called The Problem with Apu that is, I haven't seen it, but I understand
really
it's about basically how the character, I don't know, well, you've seen it, Lux, so why don't you explain it?
Yeah, a lot. It's basically just about how the character of Apu was a harmful stereotype for South Asian people in America, and how like how much it hurt comedians and was a tough thing for them to deal with, and how much they kind of didn't like it and wanted to change, and like a lot about media representation stuff. The reason why it was so striking wasn't just the documentary, which is great, but the way the Simpsons reacted, which was like, well, if you don't like it, you fuck off. And it was like a bunch of people being like, hey, your shit hurt our feelings, and it has for like 20 years. And they were like, too bad, nerds.
I have a
which
little
is like, again, way shittier than anything South Park's ever done, because like South Park at least uses their show to engage with those questions and doesn't just like,
I mean, there's a good decade
waving in people's faces.
There's just a good decade of Jew jokes that have no nuance to them. So I don't think you could really say that The Simpsons.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that surprises me.
I'm saying, like in the Al Jean era Simpsons, which is lines up with like the post-Jew joke South Park.
Sorry. And there are real Jewish characters on South Park who are stuff besides Jews. Like the problem with the poo is that like he was literally just a stereotype, and he was literally like the only South Asian character on TV at the time, which makes it pretty important.
I have a little insider story on this documentary. I mean, it's not a very interesting one, but my roommate is the assistant to a Simpsons writer. I won't name his name, but he was interviewed for this movie, The Problem with the Poo. And the way that the story was told to me is that him and Hari got along so well, and the interview went so great. And then when the movie came out, he watched it, and at least in his words, Hari made him look like a fucking monster, and he was depressed for like 2 weeks. So I mean,
that movie was definitely out to prove a point, so it doesn't super shock me.
Yeah.
I think it was a good point they were proving, but like that strategy doesn't like super surprise me, because it definitely had like a thing it wanted to say.
Sure. All right. So anything else anyone wants to say before we get into the mailbag? I feel like we covered this one pretty extensively. Nope.
Yeah.
No, I think this episode, the more we talk about it, the more I like this episode. It just had a lot, like so much layering to it. Shit. Like I think even the things Amanda doesn't like about the episode make me like it more, just that it's like provoking and creating that kind of framework to talk about it.
If we all liked it, and if I think this is only testament to the fact of how balanced it is. Well, maybe not.
It is.
Well, no, I think it
A++
is,
and F minuses in this.
Well,
episode.
but doesn't that make it? I don't know.
That means
I guess
that
it
either
balances
makes
out to B-, C+.
Yeah. Well, that either means it's balanced or that
that's around where I am.
divisive. I don't know.
The correct one.
I think it means that it's good art, baby.
Good art, baby.
If people fucking hate it and fucking love it. Then...
Well, Amanda, I mean, do you dislike it the same after this discussion?
I will say that like you guys made some points that made me like a little bit less annoyed at it. I don't want to ever watch it again, but I guess I'm less pissy about it.
The podcast is working.
Yay.
I mean, honestly, I thought that the first episode was the funniest.
What?
I didn't really laugh that much at this episode, but I really, upon a second viewing of this episode, I was really impressed.
Yeah.
I will say I didn't laugh once. That's a criticism I meant to say.
Not even the South Park Council can suck my Mexican dick, and then he says, I don't even have a dick. Get the joke? I thought that was funny.
Or what about when he's at the lawyer's office and their wall painting is just a black and white photo of a butthole?
Wait, I didn't even know. That's a Easter egg.
Yeah.
I did not notice.
I mean, it's sort of an Easter egg. There's just a butthole on the wall for like 10 seconds. It's so good.
See, I laughed the whole time, and I also just had a big smile on my face just because of how I was like, wow, I can just feel the momentum of this story they're telling me.
I'm glad we were able to be in sync for once this season.
I know.
At least so far.
Nice.
We're only on episode 3. But
let's get some mailbag.
Anyway, let's get some mailbag. We got some voicemails. Do you want to start with voicemails or start with good old-fashioned email? All right, let's go good old-fashioned email. So that means we're starting with Lux.
Yeah, so as usual, most of these are from about last week's episode because people don't get emails in because they've only had 12 hours to watch the episode. But we have one specific to last night's episode, and that is from Corey. And he says, hey, all, I know you're busy on the podcast. We'll get right to it. During the problem with the poo, in the postpartum scene, when PC principal is apologizing for taking advantage of strong woman, and she argues over him that no one took advantage of her. Do you think this is a nod towards, for lack of a better term at the moment, benevolentisms? That is, usually privileged people trying to rectify injustices, but ultimately reinforcing them by automatically typecasting the less privileged as victims?
Yes.
In this case, PC principal is trying to mollify the situation by placing himself as the one who took advantage of their relationship. But the premise suggests she wasn't willful enough to make her own decision. Thanks, and I love listening to your podcast Friday mornings. Well, thanks, Corey. And Amanda, it seems like you had an immediate and visceral reaction to that email.
That was right on point, Corey.
Nailed it.
You won it.
Yeah, I think that is exactly what's happening there.
Nailed
I don't
it.
think that I have much to say about it. I thought it was a really good and interesting email.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah?
I don't know what that was meant to say, but
I'm sorry.
Do we want to talk? Do you want an email about Durkheim or an email about the film The Devils?
Let's talk about The Devils. I saw that movie at the Egyptian once, but I got to be honest, I was so stoned I barely remember it.
All right, I like this movie a lot. Really enjoyed your conversation about. Oh, sorry, this is from Noah. Really enjoyed your conversation about last week's episode, and it made me enjoy the episode even more. Recently, I watched Ken Russell's 1971 film The Devils and found a fair amount of similarity between that movie and this episode. What I found interesting about the film and the episode was the priest character in both is in conflict with their institutions about their faith. There were also similarities between the way the public reacted to the events of both the film and the episode, where they are in it for the entertainment more than any moral or spiritual obligation. Both pieces of media tend toward the idea that real spirituality or faith is in fact few and far between. I think that both South Park and The Devils are suggesting that it's the institution of the church that divides people from finding the true religion, which I guess is what we were talking about last week. But I guess the thrust of the question is like, do we think that also thanks Noah, do we think that like religion itself is an issue, or is it just really institutional problems?
I think the South Park episode definitely leans more toward the institutional problems, because I think part of when the adults are saying that, wow, I really miss church, it really does something. I mean, even though it's a joke and that really the only thing that does good to their soul is the fact that they can make pedophile jokes. But I do think that that's a stand-in for the idea that, hey, religion or organized religion or, weekly sermons that allow you to, think positive thoughts for the rest of the week are productive. So I more to like what Lux said last week, I think it's much more on the institutional wavelength.
Yeah, how do you guys, Amanda, Ryan, you guys got thoughts on this one?
I agree. Institutions suck. That's the message, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the message. Just, I mean, mainly they had a whole process with the whole, Comboni and stuff like that. Like, there's a whole literally institutional, process that they have for when this happens. And it looks like they've been there before. So I think that's spot on. Noah, thank you.
All right. Well, now let's talk about Quentin's email, which is the Durkheim email that I'm very excited about because I'm a big old nerd. There's some big words in here. I wanted to mostly talk about the sociological concept of collective effervescence. This is a force or feeling that people have when they participate in shared activities. The concept was developed by Durkheim and fits under the functionalism paradigm. It can apply to sporting events as fans cheer for their respective teams and other rituals. Therefore, it is usually associated with institutions such as church. After listening to the podcast and rewatching episode 2, I thought about how this concept applies to the episode. In the beginning of the episode, Randy and Sharon talk about how they just feel better after they go to church. We automatically think of the typical church scene where the authorities and officers of the church are respected. And we also think of various ceremonies and other rituals involved. It is soon revealed that the citizens of South Park all join in and collectively ridicule their priest. This action has become a ritual and produces collective effervescence. You could also argue that after you pick on someone, it diminishes your own flaws. This could be the case with the citizens, except that later we find Randy, Kenny's dad, and other residents questioning their existence. Without their ritualistic action, they do not feel that collective effervescence. They felt lost. Therefore, I would argue that collective effervescence fits with the episode, as the concept itself is a theory of religion. However, as I stated before, it can be applied to other events outside of religion, such as concerts. So thanks, Quentin, for that email. And then Ryan, so does this help give a little more weight to the people making fun of the priest and stuff? Because I know that wasn't your bag last episode.
Yeah, I actually really liked that email because my main thing with that was just, sometimes when you're watching a South Park episode, you're kind of literally going okay, what is this standing in for? What is this a metaphor for? And kind of it was I couldn't really figure out what they were trying to say with everybody in church saying the pedophile jokes. But yeah, I agree with him about the collective effervescence of church because when I was there growing up, you're kind of literally you're a kid, you're imitating stuff, so you're kind of looking around going, all these people seem to be really into this, I'm just gonna do what they do, and then everyone leaves feeling good, so you're like, wow, I must feel really good, and you don't maybe necessarily know why, at least when you're growing up in a religion. But then, so yeah, I feel like maybe they're playing on, or maybe what the email is saying that they're playing on is just the idea that everyone's kind of followers, and to a degree, in these kind of institutions like football games and stuff, and you're just kind of doing you're doing what the community's doing.
There's a value in doing stuff together, no matter what the thing is. It's the together that matters more than the thing. Or
exactly. Whatever. Yeah, that's a good email.
Yeah.
Good take on that.
Yeah, I thought with that. And then I got one more if we got time for it, Jared.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. This one is from Paul. My name is Paul. I really liked what Ryan said in our last episode about the difficulty Catholics faced. It made me think of my own experience. I grew up a Catholic and I kept going to church well into my 20s, but I stopped completely when the first pedophile scandals came out in a very large way. I was put off particularly by the way the church was covering these things up on such a large scale and for so long. That being said, looking back, I feel like it was an easy decision for me to make. I was never terribly spiritual to begin with, and I went to church more for the sense of community, like collective effervescence, and in the hopes to find that spirituality eventually. And around the time I gave up on it, I also found other groups to identify with. So the pedophile scandal was more of a trigger for me than a real cause. I do, however, still know a lot of Catholics who continue to practice. I want to tell you about one particular friend of mine who is strongly engaged in a campaign for allowing female priesthood. I see this as such a brave and strong thing to do. Here is this girl who clearly should feel unwelcome in the Catholic Church. The Church's views on women priests are extremely rigid and have been so for many centuries. It's hard to imagine we might see women Catholic priests in this generation. And yet, apparently, there's a whole group of women who say, no, we're part of this church too, and we're not going anywhere. In fact, we want to do more for the church. We want to preach. Sincerely, as I say, screw you guys, I'm going home and quit the church and make cum jokes. I think it takes amazing guts to stay in, even when everything seems set up to make you feel unwelcome and to demand your place and demand change. Sorry for this very long email. Best regards, Paul. Jesus Christ.
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
I really like that email. I think it's a really interesting thing. I didn't really know there was much of that movement, and I think it matches up with the episode really well, just because it's like sort of the same choice Father Maxey makes.
I think all three of these emails really connect in an interesting way. I really like how not only was it the collective effervescence that was ultimately productive for him, so if he didn't find it in the church, he found it in another community, but also that a female would, that she gets something out of the church, even though the church limits what she wants or how she wants to participate with the church, but because she gets something so personal out of it, she wants to fight to kind of rebuild the institution.
Fight from the inside.
Right.
Yeah, dude, women priests. I'm all about it.
All right, well, those were some awesome emails. Those are all from emails, and if you want to send emails, you can send them to South Park at wisecrack.co, or if you join the Patreon and post in the Discord, I also get questions from there.
Okay, cool. So now we're going to move on to the voicemails. Just want to let you guys know if you want to hit us up with questions, comments, insights, anything. 213-534-8807. Ryan, take it away.
And if you do that, keep them about under a minute and keep them nice and funny, baby. And so, yeah, we haven't gotten a chance to screen these, unfortunately. We're going to do that more in the future, but this time, so basically we'll start playing. We got a lot of them. If we might cut them off and move to the next one at any moment. So sorry if we don't get to all yours. Here we go. Tyler first.
Hi, Wisecrack. This is Tyler from Connecticut. I was interested in your last podcast. You mentioned you were confused why Clyde didn't want the priest at his birthday party. I found that to mean you constantly see the priest multiple times, constantly citing Bible verses. I thought that was kind of a play on what Father Mackey mentioned earlier in the episode, where the faith really ties you to it, where when you're, especially a priest, the faith is all you know, and it's hard to connect with people outside of it. Just food for thought. Thank you.
So Amanda and I talked about this last week, and I think that although it is meant to suggest that Father Maxey's being alienated, I thought it was just a bad example, because no matter if priests were the most loved profession in the world, a kid doesn't want an adult at their fucking birthday party.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the end of it. That's the whole bit, right?
Right.
Well, and so Tyler's just saying that he's just kind of giving a reason why a priest might not be able to connect with people and would be awkward at a birthday party. Is that kind of what he's saying?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, they did kind of have a running joke where the priest, like, very sort of mechanically said something spiritual in greeting to everybody, even when it wasn't, like, totally, like, not a normal priest thing to do, I feel like. So I feel like that's what he was referencing.
Yeah, and I think what Tyler's talking about also is like what makes the priest one step even more annoying than any adult at a birthday party is like, I don't want an adult here, and I certainly don't want who's quoting the book of Matthew. Like, that, I think, just like levels up how much you wouldn't, you know what I mean? I think he's right that it does add something to that, but I think that Jared's also right that like it's not a great example because like any grown up would be a problem.
Right. All right, what's next?
And we got Ashley. You're up, Ashley.
Hi, this is Ashley from Illinois. This is for the Respect Our Authoritah podcast. And I want to talk about first Cartman with the Calamity Jane hat. Very, very funny. Also, I want to talk about how in this episode that the whole thing with the Catholic Church, I think it's funnier if you are Catholic. And I think that's something that Ryan kind of touched on. And I think that it's like, if you are Catholic, you kind of see all of the absurdity in this. And like you see with the whole, with your spirit, like that's a very Catholic joke because it was something in the church that changed after years of it being, and also with you. And so kind of the difference I'm seeing between the other members, Jared, Lux, and Amanda, is that you kind of aren't part of the church, so it, like, doesn't understand that how
we don't get
Catholics constantly make fun of each other. and like are constantly making fun of the church. And so, as someone who grew up like a very devout Catholic, I found this episode hilarious because it kind of gets into that idea that we all find it so absurd. And I think that's the same thing we see in Red Hot Catholic Love. Is the same thing of everyone laughing about the Queen Spider because it's so absurd, but it's like such a Catholic thing. I don't know if that's like a hot take or if that's even like relevant, but I just wanted to share my thoughts about that because I thought that it might kind of offer a new perspective onto this episode.
Oh yeah.
I love your podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And you're welcome.
All right, yeah. Thanks, Ashley, for agreeing with me. That was it's nice hearing from another Catholic listener, and I actually the in your spirit thing, man. That's so true because like that caught me off guard. You know, whenever I came back to like my home and we went to church, and then it's like they're saying in your spirit all of a sudden. I'm like, wait a minute. And
Wait, so why did they change that?
I forget why, but it was definitely one of those things where a thing you've done your whole life, all of a sudden at church, they changed it one day. They're like, now we're saying in your spirit now. And,
well, that is a joke. I had no idea was a joke.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Or at least like a wink to a certain member of the audience.
Yeah.
All right, cool. We got one more?
Yeah, let's do one more. All righty. Just gonna...
We're going to pick a random one.
I'm gonna shut my eyes, put my finger on the board, and we got Nicholas. Where are you, Nick?
Hello, this is Nicholas S. I absolutely loved both episodes of South Park so far, especially the continuation of Stan with the cast. 4 things. He was forced to go to church even though he was injured, but if you notice, when they're entering the church, Randy asks the family where, I think it's their daughter, and they mention she has a spinal injury, and Randy just passes off and says, oh, well, too bad she can't go to church. So it's like saying they don't care the condition their children are in, which just like Stan has the cast, goes on to the parents not caring, everyone's blanked out. Also, for the Faith in Christ song, there was one, I think it was at least once, they played that song when the cleanup crew is driving around. I know they definitely play it when they stop the car. So that could be a joke that that's an actual song and they're playing it on the radio. Thirdly, I believe that the church could just stand for the church in itself, or any sort of insert some type of community here, a belonging, a fellowship, a club, or just could be a church, so long as it's a standard for anything community related. And for the last part, for the abortion thing, I don't know if South Park will do a serious deep dive into that because they did a lot of it in the video game, The Stick of Truth. There was a massive abortion thing that
and the new one too.
Censored or banned in a couple of countries. But anyways, keep doing what you're doing. I like this podcast and others. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Ooh, 4-parter. That's a mini series.
The one part I want to talk about is that we had talked about the Catholic love song, the Faith in Christ.
Well, it's a lot funnier when it's coming out of the truck of the cleanup crew.
Right, and we'd also gotten an email about this. I forgot who it was, but it was someone, because we were all confused about what the joke was for when Father Maxie and Butters are hanging out and they're singing Faith in Christ, and then the guy in the email said that the joke was that it's that you have to wait for when the cleanup crew comes and it's the same song. So the idea is that basically the idea that both of those groups of people have the same kind of Faith in Christ song makes it to where that is meaningless, or it gives it this way more evil connotation in the second scene. That's what the guy said, and I can kind of see that.
I don't think that's a joke. This doesn't seem like a joke to me, but it does seem like a cool observation about how like both the cleanup crew and Father Maxie share like a set of common like church accoutrement and like aesthetic that connects them, even though they're very, very different people, which I thought was a good piece of writing.
Hey, before we sign off, I think there's an email or a voicemail from Matthew. He's actually one of our writers who called in. Can you play that one?
Yeah. Matthew, go.
Howdy, y'all. This is Matthew, writer for Wisecrack, calling in for the Respect Our Authoritah podcast. So the question raised in this episode is one of the most pressing and relevant of our time. Should people who are either figuratively or literally pieces of shit be stripped of their livelihood and ostracized from society? Now, Kyle has long been the moral voice of the show, and I suspect he plays the part which Stone and Parker find themselves in these days. wanting to be a voice that speaks up for the Mr. Hankeys of the world, to keep their jobs and maybe even society's good graces, but knowing they're unable to do so without getting smeared themselves and drowned by the tears of the quote-unquote PC babies. Given the bittersweet farewell, the viewers definitely intended to be saddened by Mr. Hankey's departure, which I would think implicitly answers the question as, no, we shouldn't ruin the lives even of true pieces of shit. But the tone of the episode is one of defeat and resignation. Best summed by Cartman, that's 2018 for you.
Nailing it,
This has been,
Matthew.
Along with the past two episodes, one of the funniest in a long time. The show is definitely at a recent high among past seasons. But
That's for sure.
this episode was as depressing as it was funny.
Yeah, well, as soon as you were like, Matthew, the one of the writers, an email, I knew this was exactly what that voicemail was going to sound like.
Yeah, well, I think he basically was echoing what we're saying. He nailed it.
Well, he echoed everything except the line where, because we had taken time to be like, Mr. Hankey's kind of an asshole.
Without the nuance of Mr. Hankey sucks. Right?
Yeah, right. I don't think Matt and Trey are wanting to just, defend every true awful piece of shit out there, but they are saying that, if you do... If you're even going to go there at all for anyone who is a true piece of shit or any less part of the spectrum, then you're going to get shit on you. So that's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, I think basically, like that. Like what I'm saying is like, even people who aren't that shitty, you still can't defend. Even there are people who don't deserve defending, but there are people who might, and you still can't defend them either.
Exactly.
Amanda,
you hate this point.
Is that true? Anyway.
No, go for it, Amanda.
No, we want to hear what
we want to hear.
I mean, tell us this is bullshit.
I mean, okay, like, I feel like you can probably just cut this, but like, I feel like it's just it's like a very privileged conversation about whether like these like extremely like wealthy, like totally okay in society people like deserve me to feel bad for them when they like misuse their place of authority, and like I don't. So
well, okay, here, but
yeah.
take
the discourse of like their life is ruined and they're ostracized is kind of a bit much.
Yeah, well, no, but it's universal. I mean, take privilege and class out of it. I mean, just imagine that this is. I mean, obviously they're talking about these very big examples of very powerful people getting their jobs lost. Boo-hoo, I get it, but it's like think about like, all right, this is just a school situation, a community, a church, or something, and then somebody has somebody is a little bit of a piece of shit one point in their life maybe, and if you want to talk about them or if you want to defend them, then you to the community are shit, so yeah, like I get what you're talking about with the big.
Is that true?
Yeah, I 100% believe it is.
Like a lot of people in power in like ways in like my communities over the course of my life have been pieces of shit. Well, you know what? Maybe it's changing. Maybe I feel like they're reacting to the fact that people actually get called out for being pieces of shit now, whereas 5 years ago, nobody did.
Well, I think that
it's overwhelmingly a good thing that people are getting called out. So anyway.
As Kyle says, he says that, yeah, Mr. Hankey's a piece of shit, but I don't think that he deserves the level of outrage. And I think that everyone can agree, and I certainly agree that it's good that we call people out on their shit, but I think that the level of punishment is ultimately what's being questioned here.
The level of punishment.
This is where I side with Amanda. Is like I think calling it punishment's kind of bullshit. Like all that happens is they have to go be rich, not on TV.
Well,
for
okay,
a while.
So that's what I'm saying. Take
the privilege thing out of it.
Take privilege
so
out of it.
obviously,
even if we take the privilege thing out of it, like I don't know, you guys have been in the comedy scene. People in the comedy scene,
this
like
is
on a
exactly
small
what I
level,
was
do
going to
shitty
bring
things
up.
and still get booked on shows.
Okay, well, look, I'm not in the comedy scene. I'm only tangential to the comedy scene. I hear about these scandals and stuff, and a lot of them are just people who are trying to make a name for themselves in comedy, haven't even sold a pilot, haven't even made enough money off their writing to pay their rent, and they already get thrown out of town for something. And I'm not going to bring up any specific examples, and I'm sure that there is a level of nuance here, obviously, depending on what you did, does depend on. But yeah, the ones that we hear about are the Roseannes and the James Gunns and all that stuff, and obviously they're going to be just fine. They're all millionaires. But I think that this also does happen on a smaller scale, and it's just not on the front page of CNN because they're not celebrities.
Oh, here's the other thing. I think like even evoking visually like the Kavanaugh hearings with like the Mr. Hankey like saying some shitty, making some shitty tweets is like weird and really not on point because it just kind of like diminishes. You know what I'm saying? It just kind of trivializes a lot of what's been going on. I don't know.
I
hated it.
But now I'm going to be a guy that I hate, which is the guy who's like, I know that you're one talking about the Kavanaugh thing, but here's my take on it. But here's my take on it. I actually thought that was really well done because it didn't seem like they were talking about the things Kavanaugh did so much as the way he carried himself in those hearings.
So wait, did he actually sniffle a lot? Because I didn't get that. I didn't get that at all.
Yeah. He sniffled a lot. He yelled and screamed and jumped around and called everything bullshit. Like they did a really good job of mirroring his behavior, like to a T. And I thought that was a really funny way to be like, this guy's a piece of shit and this is a piece of shit act. And I thought that was very funny.
See,
I think you're right that it did kind of conflate some messy things. Because what he did was what he was alleged to have done is extremely terrible, but what we saw on television, they made fun of in a very perfect way.
I cynically think that they just put that scene in there so it could be the first scene that they release as advertising so that they can make it seem like they're talking about something that's more of today than it actually is. Because, yeah, I mean, other than visually evoking it, they're really not talking about the specific allegations about him. And it seems like kind of it's a way different
they
thing.
are, though. And I mean, I agree with Amanda that, yeah, like, you know, when this is a sexual assault case and, you know, basically they're just evoking the imagery when really they're conflating the Roseanne thing, you know, which is kind of a way more different deal.
Shit posting when you're fucked up at midnight.
At the end of the day, I did think it was interesting them mashing those two things together because it's basically, like we were talking about before, the spectrum. There's the people that write shitty racist tweets, and then there's people that were accused of heinous, you know, sexual assault. That's a way different thing. They're both totally shitty, but it's like, yeah, I thought it was interesting, but I do think it was muddy and probably insensitive, obviously, too.
Yeah, I think it was a little insensitive. I didn't think it was a good critique of that kind of behavior, which I found frustrating.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off with the smartest mantra of this episode is that everyone's shitty sometimes. And with that, we're going to say goodbye. So hit us up, email southpark@wisecrack.co, voicemail 213-534-8807. Where can we find you on the internet, Ryan?
You can find me at Ryan Shorts, weekly comedy videos, YouTube and Facebook. I'll see you there.
And Lux.
You can find Party World Wrestling on Facebook. That's my wrestling show. You can look up Dad's New Apartment, where I just directed a sketch about Kanye West, that I think is very funny.
I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, check it out. It's on Dad's New Apartment on Facebook. And then you can also, what's the other thing that I was about? Oh, yeah. And then you can find the Game Boys podcast on iTunes and stuff. And that's where me and my friend Griffin talk about video games.
And Amanda.
Jared's been on it. It was great.
Oh, thank you. We talked about God of War. Love that game. And Amanda.
Oh, I'll tweet sometimes at Amanda Shirker.
Rock and roll. All right, guys. We'll see you next week for season 22, episode 4. Peace out.
Screw you guys. We're going home.
Later.